All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bella Gamer, with my co-host Blue Boy.
Hello.
And today we're gonna be talking about a very interesting subject, I feel, which is what does D&D offer? It's not gonna be necessarily a D&D stream, but I think we can't really argue with the fact that if D&D was actually bad, then it wouldn't have blown up like it did, right? Like, so many people wouldn't be playing D&D and like hard stuck on D&D if there wasn't some aspect to it that were fun, that people were enjoying. So I want to kind of like zoom in, look at that, and kind of like compare it to some other games, and just like talk tabletop theory like we normally do. But before that, we'll let some people hop into chat here today, so just do a bit of small talk. So Alex, what's been up?
I am back. I'm still working on my own videos. I finally figured out the whole copyright thing with the music using Carl Casey. Apparently, it is a known glitch that this one specific publishing company just will copyright claim you if you use his music. Like, it is a known problem, and he's done a lot of stuff in the background, and like the best he's been able to do with this corporation is make it so like if you do a copyright dispute, they will take it down and like remove it. But like, man, this music company is kind of evil, since like they're only taking advantage of people if you can, like, if you just don't do it, if like you're too worried or nervous to submit a copyright dispute.
Yeah.
It's just fucked up. But it's good. Like, Carl Casey's music is safe. It's fine to use. It's not actually copyrighted, and like his stuff is really good backing track. Like, I like the work he does. It's just the fact that if that happens, especially if there's any people who do create content creation, if you get a copyright claim, he's apparently been trying his damnedest, but it's just the corporation has an auto system that flags his music as like shit they own, which isn't even true. They don't own his work.
Right.
But I got that. I put out just 2 nice long videos for people. It's been very funny. It's been funny because like it was essentially I channeled table talk very heavily in that thing, because there were a lot of like actual tabletop design stuff I was talking about for Vampire, and it was very fun. And seeing people like comment on that part has been nice. Thankfully, no one's been really weird about it, and like been very aggro. So can say Vampire the Masquerade community better than Pathfinder and Warhammer? Question mark. Nobody has taken it like weirdly seriously about my rankings. The worst that's happened is I've been threatened to be turned into a chair. So, but that one's a given. That's just Zemeski doing their thing.
Yeah. As far as my ends, getting ready to make videos. My mother should be moving up here like full time next week. Though she still got some stuff to do. She's still moving. It's a big process. So, it's not something that's going to be done super quick, but I'm looking forward to doing some content. Honestly, I'm so excited to talk about Legend in the Mist, because I genuinely feel like Legend in the Mist is revolutionary in the narrative gaming space, just due to like, because there's been narrative games before, right? There's been games I've tried to add some level of mechanics to narrative stuff, but like Legend in the Mist, the Mist engine specifically just works so well. Yesterday I was playing with my friend. We were doing a Lore of the Mysteries game, and it was so ridiculously fun, because like Lore of the Mysteries is one of those settings where you can't have a normal game feel right, a normal like statistic based game feel right, because it's just too weird. It's too conceptual. Like JoJo's another really good example. You can't do JoJo in anything but Legend in the Mist at the moment.
Yeah, like it is incredibly weird and interesting, which has been fun because that's what I've been actively reading. And I keep thinking about like okay, so what are like cool things I could give myself? And it's all powers, and I'm like, oh, I could 100% kind of adapt a stand idea like this into Legend of the Mist. Because like one idea I had is just what if what if Diavolo was a ranged character? Because I think the idea of time skipping yourself shooting at somebody, like the idea is like an angel with a big bow, divine bow and arrow, but they're able to skip time. So like you just have zero reaction time. And like you can work that in honestly a pretty fair mechanical way in Legend of the Mist. And like I don't know what other game you can.
Yeah.
But shouts out to the MMO that's going to try to do a video game adaptation of Lord of Mysteries.
Yeah.
The only thing I know about it is like apparently permadeath is going to be a thing, or like permadeath, and you can ascend too hard and get your character killed. That's going to be a thing.
It's going to be interesting. I'm not too hopeful because it's just, I don't know. It's such a weird game that I feel like whatever you could do couldn't be done in video game form that well.
Yeah. It's not one of those bits I'm like incredibly chomping at the bit to play, like not one of those games, but my hope is that it's good because if it is that good, I'd love to jump in because I still have like a bookmark of like Lord of Mysteries. It's just it's been on my thing, my nightly, like I've just been reading JoJo.
Yeah, Lord of the Mysteries, it's a really good series.
It sounds sick as hell. Like it's right up my alley. I just need to actually bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah, I mean, like Booter joined me in my like solo game that I was doing for a time. I stopped because I was like, well, if I could play with someone else, that'd be better. And I'm glad I did because it's very interesting. But my character's like progressed, and his character's fresh. But just because of how Legend of the Mist works and everything and like what characters can do, it's really hard unless you're intentionally making characters who do the same concept to step on each other's toes. Booter's currently playing a secret suppliant pathway character, and their whole thing is just they listen to the maddening whispers and they can get eldritch knowledge, but they just have a higher chance of going insane. And his character, he's done this thing where he's a natural born Beyonder, which is a thing in the setting. So he has natural suppliant as one of his tags, which is really cool because normally when you want to like talk to the gods or whatever, you need to do a ritual. You need to draw attention to yourself by sacrificing, some incense and candles and all that kind of stuff. But because of Booter being a secret suppliant and 2 being a natural suppliant and everything, he can kind of just pray to the evil gods anytime he wants to get information.
I don't know if you want to easily get those gods' attention. Sounds like it's also a bit of a downside.
It's scary because the thing is it depends on how like important the question is, because that'll determine the difficulty. And if he gets even like a success with consequences, he gets madness. And if he gets, madness 6, he just dies effectively. And if he gets madness 5, he's pretty much incapacitated. And then also like after or at 3 madness and every madness after that, you have to roll to see if you become a rampager or not, which just means you turn into a monster and your character dies. So,
Damn.
But it's so nice to have his character in the story because we're looking for things and he can just ask. He can just ask a god, like, hey, where's this thing? What's this thing we're looking for? And then they can give him the information. And otherwise, you have to do it the old-fashioned way, which my character is somewhat experienced at. But his character has proven so handy. Even though I'm like an experienced Beyonder, my character has a lot of experience, and my pathway, my own homebrewed pathway, the Daydreamer pathway, lets me kind of like take on certain acting roles. Like I can pretend to be a good investigator, or like a powerful Beyonder, that kind of stuff. It just makes me like a more proficient person in general. It's not as supernatural as much as just like I can pick up skill sets as I need in the game. So it lets my character do a lot of things. So I'm handy in a lot of situations. But man, even with that, it's just so nice to just be like, hey, I'm just going to ask a god what the answer to this question is. Sure, I might get a little madness, but like we can get the answer right away. And it's like, man, damn, that's really useful.
It's also like, I mean, it's a character idea that's really useful for solo stuff. Like if you're doing solo, because that's the biggest problem of being solo is you have your hard focus, but like there's other scenarios that can come up that you're like, damn, I wish I had at least like A+1.
Yeah, well, and the hard part for me as well is my actor powers, because actor is my second sequence. Well, my eighth sequence technically, because it goes down, but it works dependent on the expectations of people that like perceive me. So I can't take on a role unless someone is there to see me, and they have to have an expectation that I can fill that role. So like if someone knows I'm a different kind of person, like I played a different role for them before, I can't change my role in front of them, because I can't break character effectively. So
that's fair.
It's been nice because he's playing like this young guy, like a 15-year-old, and so I've come across as this very like competent, very like smart Beyonder. So I use his character to give myself buffs based on what I think his character thinks of my character. Like, does he think I'm strong? I'm strong. Does he think I'm smart? I'm smart. You know, that kind of stuff.
That is fun.
But it can be hard because sometimes like combat is a thing where I don't have a lot of combat tags. I'm not a very combat focused sequence. I can become a combat character, but that's only if I can through the scene. Like if someone's expecting me to be combat capable, if I haven't set that precedence, if I haven't role played well enough to like set that precedence, then I can't do so. So there's been a lot of interesting things, and man, some of the crazy shenanigans we got into yesterday was really insane, really fun.
Yeah, it's whenever I see you guys specifically just by yourselves in that in our one Discord, I'm like, that's Legend of Mist time.
Yeah. Though honestly, I gotta say as well, I love our Beast Tamer game. I'm so excited every week to play.
I have some ideas. Like I'm like, man, at one hand, I would love to just have one empowered, super strong thing. But, like, if I'm going to make a team, it's been a fun, like, little creative exercise. Of, like, what are all the interpretations of, like, time? Yeah. What are all... Because I'm not going to, with how the affinities are, I like the idea, and I think it fits his story too much of... One of the reasons my character has struggled so hard to like find his place in the world and is only finding it in like his young adult life is because like his affinity is just so rare. And like it's built in then with his dad is like his dad is the whole thing of it's the typical kind of Pokemon style, like it's about friendship and all these creatures are your friends and you build like that team that works, and it's not the rare things because like, he prides himself on having a team full of pretty common stuff, but it's just he's really smart and really good at what he does, and like that's one of the things that carries him and makes him such a fun watch. But like for Evan, it is that means that's what he grew up around, and he's just like, I don't fuck with any of this. And then it's just finally when he's like has the absolute rarest thing, and he's like, fuck, I guess this is it. But it builds like, okay, what are the interpretations of like time as a power? How can you use it? And it's been very fun. Like I have like the ideas already of a defensive creature that is built around time, but specifically turns into a precog that shuts down like actions. Because I like the idea of a shutdown creature like Spirit, with like mentally fucking with you and like mentally kind of like creating impulses in like a creature to where it like overrides what they want to do in the moment, or even just makes them hesitate. And then having that transition into like when I reveal a truth, basically, like, oh, this isn't just like mental compulsion. It's actually picking a timeline and locking them to it. Like I think that's just a really creative time power. And something only this system could do.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a ranged creature that basically King Crimson skips the arrow flying at you. So in your perspective, you just an arrow appeared in your chest.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I was thinking about it too. I unironically think one of the best healer type powers I've ever seen, and like I don't know, it's hard for me to name off the top of my head. Series and anything else that has used healing powers as interestingly as JoJo Part 4. Because Crazy Diamonds, like healing, I revert it back to its original like state.
Yeah.
Is such a like genuinely sick power because he uses it so creatively. Like the one that like I think a lot of people point to, myself included, is because I'm right now on the Highway Star arc. Him destroying his motorcycle in midair and then like to specifically not run over a mother and her baby and then restoring it in midair to keep driving is like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Or one moment when he crashes in through like a car window and like rolls out the back of it, healing it as he's leaving to trap Highway Star inside of it. Like that kind of shit. He is so creative with that power of just I heal an object or person back to what it was before. And like that's it. And that's such a creative power. I think you could rework that with time a little bit. But like that'd be a fun healer like creature. Just have something that like we think it heals, but as it ascends, it's like no, it's actually reverting it like 10 seconds to the past.
Yeah.
Like I love that shit. Like the powers you can come up with are very fun, and it's like hell yeah. I love thinking about like what are some weird conceptual powers that only this system can do.
Yeah, and honestly, and what I like about it, right, is it's not just like we can just tell a story about anything, right? Because you could technically always do that, reskin mechanics, all this kind of stuff. But because of how the Myst engine is set up, there's ways that you can make these things interesting that work with the mechanical system. Even talking about like the using time as healing and stuff like that. Like you could say this is origin level, even though it's a crazy powerful ability, but given the context of the world, right, it's origin level. And you could have the restriction that like, oh yeah, it can set something back 10 seconds, you know? So it's something that you have to do immediately with like your next action to get the healing effect, or it doesn't work. And I think that's mechanically interesting, right? Because it's like anything, right? You could lose a leg, but you could heal that leg as long as 10 seconds hasn't gone by, which is something like other healing in other games is like, no, I can't do severed limbs. You know, I could do gashes, I could do normal damage, but not that. And like in this system, you very much can have it where like Suzanne's character has healing, right? And that's really good, but having the ability to undo anything as long as it's done like, you know, on your next turn effectively has a lot of strength that doesn't necessarily step on the toes of the healing aspect already, because it's not just like better healing, right? Because that would be kind of lame where you just like, oh, my healing can just undo anything because it's time based. But if you have that stipulation that no, but it has to be done on like your next turn, you know, like not too much time can go before your healing like loses effectiveness because, you know, time has passed.
The other thing is like I like the power idea because it literally isn't just healing. Because if you can work it in the way of like I have the ability to rewind something or someone like 10 seconds in the past, then there's just more creative abilities you can do. I like there's just so many interesting creative applications with the idea of I restore an item, and it's the part I'm gonna like I'll shout out. I've like everyone can have their issues with JoJo and how it's written and everything. Personally, I think a lot of the issues I've been able to criticize about JoJo are kind of fixed in the manga. Like the manga just is genuinely better than the anime. I'm gonna become a big manga truther. But it's because it's specifically Araki's like the art form he prefers and like really likes to work in. Josuke is just the way he as a character acts is so based on like his stand power. Because he's stated to have he's had it since he was a child. So like there's just certain things where you notice Josuke is like really like he's really good about risky behavior because like he has that nature of if I break something I can just restore it immediately. And he thinks in like a laterally different way than the other characters around him because he's always thinking about like, well, what can I do to restore this? I mean, literally in like the first episode, you see him. He donuts his mom
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the water stand is inside her, and he like cracks a bottle at the same time, pulls it all out at the same time, healing two things, and then he's trapped the stand. Because he can do that without like the threat of killing his mom.
Yep.
I love that. I love how like actually interesting and like intelligent of a character can be based off of the power they have. And like that, it's so cool to play a game because the difference, I think, when it comes to a narrative game is you could have this in some other games. I like that Legend of the Mist lets me play it, not just like talk about it.
Right, yeah.
Like, that's the fun part.
Yeah,
I am playing these creatures. I'm not just describing an effect and kind of rolling the same thing. It's like, no, it allows you to make like mechanics and like just interesting concepts work. A lot more than other things would just kind of be narratively hand-waved. Because like I think that's the fear in my head of like, I'd love to play a game that's very based on JoJo. It'd be so sick. My worry is like, well, the game, if you're gonna embrace it really openly, would have to be just a constant yes and machine where there's not really any mechanics for it until with Legend of the Mist, because I've really yet to find something that I don't think we could make a mechanic out of for Legend of the Mist with JoJo. The only bit would be this higher tier like mythic stuff for any of the stands that get like insanely powerful. But that's just a tier thing. That's not even an issue with the system. That's just how it levels things.
Yeah, funny enough, I just finished watching a stream from the developer too, and because they're thinking about having a superhero game coming out.
It works so well in this system.
And they're thinking about adding a new might tier of Cosmic after Greatness. So.
Oh, okay.
I mean, to be fair though, like it's kind of irrelevant at the end of the day because, like, irrelevant kind of. More in the way of like, there's not a lot of mechanical difference other than the fact that like, sure, maybe you make it a -10, you know, if you try to do a cosmic action as an origin level character, or you can just say, no, cosmic level like challenges or whatever are impossible for origin level people. But like at the end of the day, it's all just talking about like, in comparison, us having this conversation of do we think this is useful in this situation or not useful in this situation, and I think it does really well at giving it mechanics because the individual like modular parts of the system, like the status conditions, the tags, positive, negative, scene tags being technically a different thing, story themes being different than character themes, allows you to patch stuff together that just feels good, and you don't have to worry about something being too strong in the system because narratively speaking, unless you're just allowing someone, and that's the thing, you have to allow someone to just be like, oh, I have the power of miracles and I can make anything happen, right?
Yeah.
With like no like preparation, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's strong, but that's like not how the system is intended. And in fact, if something is particularly vague, right, then you need to do preparation actions in order to do them. And that just increases time, and then what that does is it takes something that can do anything, and then you have to do an action to turn it into something specific. So even like I can do miracles, I can do anything, right? But you still need to do a prep action, and then it's like, okay, I want the miracle of charisma so I can talk to someone, right? You just had to take an extra step to get a charisma tag, right? So in reality, if you just had the charisma tags, it would have been more effective than I have a miracle that can make me charismatic, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. Like honestly, all them doing is making like a mythic or a cosmic like tier stuff. Like all it would really do is it kind of just like adds a thing to be like, hey, by the way, this tier of shit's allowed.
Yeah.
Makes a line more of just what is the 3-tiered power, what's like what above like the current strongest. And then giving you those like evolution things where you can get just a flat bonus for like leveling your shit up.
Yeah.
It kind of just gives you different like the different categories to help you like differentiate, plan things out. Like all it does is just make it easier for what honestly you could probably just do yourself like at home. I don't think anything's stopping you from just if you get to that point where your shit's all like at a high tier and like creating the next tier because you already kind of understand what it's going to be. Because it's not like it's going to completely change how the game works, but like it's just going to do that work for you. And the only bit I imagine would actually be helpful is the I forget what they're called. It is when you like get your milestone and you can like add an effect to your shit. Like Booter has one right now.
The special improvements.
Yeah, that.
Yes, special improvements are really fun. Actually, another fun thing, I love the secret tech in this game, and also like they come out with new things. Like the Hearts of Ravendale like setting book they have comes out with new theme types that have special improvements. They introduce like a new type of theme with an example and one special improvement to it. But what I like about this game, there's so many like secret tech in this game with some of the systems they have already. Like playing the Lord of the Mysteries game, I joined a Beyonder Circle, which is effectively just this group of people who have like they remain anonymous, but they come together in these secret gatherings to like trade eldritch items and knowledge and all this kind of stuff. And so I have that as one of my themes, is I found a circle, and now this circle is something that is a part of my character. And I took the special improvement Wisdom Handed Down, which just what it does is once per scene I can just recall information told to me by the people, in this case the circle, about a thing in the setting. So once per scene I can just kind of ask like a Beyonder question. I can just get information on a Beyonder thing in the scene that my character might not like inherently know. And it's surprisingly really good, to the point where it's just like, if you're a Monster Hunter character, you might want to consider getting a theme, like kind of like The Witcher, right? I forget what their organization for like training Witchers was called.
It was each Witcher school. They all had a different method of actually doing it, because Geralt was the wolf,
right?
But there's Griffin, Bear, Cat.
But you could have Witcher School as like a people theme of like, oh yeah, this is where I came from. This the people who taught me. And you get that special improvement. And now in any scene, you can get one piece of information about a monster, pretty much, as long as it's something that the Witchers would have known about at the time that you were going to school, effectively. And
it's just like a funny thing that a lot of games wouldn't actually do, is just, hey, you could do the thing that maybe makes it more powerful, but like you expand horizontally to mechanically represent that you've been educated.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it doesn't break anything, right? Because it's just like, you get to know something important in the scene, and it feels good to have that information, but rarely does that information allow you to just like auto succeed a check, or you could be cheesy with it. Like you could be cheesy with anything in like any game, technically. But still, if you're, and I think that's kind of the big thing when it comes to playing Legend in the Mist. If you're playing honestly, I don't think you're gonna have a bad time, right? I like all these kind of ideas that people are like, oh, but what if a player does this kind of super cheesy things? Like, yeah, they can ruin the game. They can ruin any game, right? But if everyone's playing honestly, I just don't see these problems coming up.
Yeah, because like because the game has some baked in defenses, because when you're talking about the miracle power, all I could think of is the kid. Everyone knows the kid who's like, no, force field, I have this power times infinity, like that kind of thing. And if you do that, the game already has it baked in. If you're like, well, I actually have Gojo's infinite defense, and then be like, that's an origin tag. Like, buddy, that's not your tier. We can find a weak version of it. And then like the other bit that prevents that from breaking is like, if the GM knows, oh, so I'm just gonna have to throw enemies at you that can negate that power, or at least get around it. Okay. Like, cool. The GM all has access to the exact same tag bullshit you do.
Yeah. And honestly, I've never come across a system that has made like elemental typing or like situational typing so interesting to interact with. Because usually in a game, like if you play Pathfinder, for instance, if you have an enemy that just has resistance to your damage, oh well, I guess they're just going to be resistant to my damage, and there's not a lot to do unless you have a spellcaster who can like spend a spell slot to change your damage. But they have to have that ready or available, which is rarely the case. And in Legend of the Mist, in our Beast Tamer game especially, there's a lot of situations like spirit creatures, right? Spirit creatures have become kind of like this known issue that everyone's like worrying about because they attack you like mentally. It's not physically, so your physical defenses don't normally work. And seeing the players do things to get around this is really fun. I liked Devin's, Ice Kieran fighting the drowsy creature and using the ice fog to kind of block his vision, so he had a hard time shooting his little mind bolt things, which created a tag that effectively defended him against the attacks, which is really good, and it's really interesting. And you can have elemental effects like, oh, the creature is made of water, can I give it like a frozen tag, or can I freeze it, by reducing the temperature or something like that. Like, there's a lot of really cool things that you can do that in other games, like the interaction has to be pre-built into the system for you to even interact with it, and that rarely happens sometimes. So like those systems, their answer to this is rule 0, GM can do whatever they want, and so the GM just has to like make it up. But Legend of the Mist, it's kind of just assumed, right? And it makes people more creative because you can be creative, unlike other games where you just kind of play the game.
Yeah, because like you can have some really cool creative ideas, and funnily enough, I think that is like, I find it funny, just looking at our main subject for today, that like that is kind of what the pitch of D&D is. And I think it is that when you're first starting, not to just completely shit on it, because I think like with this specific subject, it's going to be best for us not to just completely shit over the game. But like, it is the thing in my own experience, that has attracted the most people, is the idea of what D&D is, this is a game where a lot of it comes from your imagination. So you can take these like classes, fit it into what works for your table, and like play something that you've always thought was cool, but maybe like you've struggled to find it in like a video game or a movie or something. And like that is a very specific thing. It's just then I think the flaw is later on, everyone kind of realizes, oh, the idea I want to do just isn't in the game. I guess we have to add it.
Yeah, and this was a good segue, and we were kind of like going over on small talk, but me in Legend of the Mist, I can't shut the fuck up about it.
It is just a cool game that I think if you're a person who likes rules light, or at least like narrative games, I think you should try it out, because I think it might fit what you want.
Yeah, if you want your storytelling ability to matter in a game, it's the way to go.
Or even like the people out there who probably exist who like really like rules light games, the smaller the better, that kind of shit, view rules as getting in the way, but have struggled with like getting friends or whatever into the same shit you are. I think this could also just be a good middle ground. Because like I think there's enough on both sides to appeal to people. Because the only thing that I think holds Legend of the Mist back, possibly for people at their home games, is like it's very dependent on everyone at the table playing honestly, GM included. Because if the GM is just like really strict, like way too strict about like the wording of stuff, it can get annoying. In the same way as like if they're way too loose on it, then everything kind of is willy-nilly. That could get it really boring. There's a middle ground you got to find, and it's really just like engaging honestly with your friends.
Yeah, I think the general experience is going to be pretty consistently good. I think so. I don't think you have to try to not be too tight or loose with the rules,
No, it's
what makes sense,
Exactly. The way I see it is I don't know if if someone a GM runs it the way I purposefully mentally picture some people in my comment section, the straw man I create of them, uh, where they're just so annoying about like exact pronunciation or wording. It's those people. It's a straw man I create. They would have a bad time. Like because there's the very occasional person like that. But however, the counter is I don't think that person has friends, so it's probably fine. They won't play Legend of the Mist because they're annoying.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's not something that takes doing. It's really just like that's the only thing I can see a person coming away from like I played the game, I just didn't have a fun time, which is the sad bit of a person having their perspective of a game ruined because of a bad GM.
yeah,
I've heard that
and
a
that
few
can
times.
happen for sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's the
My
thing.
brother
right?
had that happen with Pathfinder. He got to play Pathfinder for the first time, and the GM fucking sucked, like really bad. It to the point where I was like mouth agape when he was describing how the session went. I
Yeah,
was like, what the fuck is this man doing? He's the one who said, as a starting character, my brother should play like Oracle.
right.
I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why would he do that?
But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, you mentioned like the direct wording of things. That's kind of just how a lot of like the more crunchier kind of games play, right? Because it has rules, right? The rules are there so that everything works well because it's necessary. The intent of the system isn't to narratively wriggle around context. It's to, this is what this thing does. A fireball does this, does this, does this. Following these rules, that's how you play. That's why you get these people who are very anal about the wording of a thing, right? Because I've done that with Pathfinder, right? Looking at the exact wording, because this is how we're trying to receive the intent of the system, the rules that we play in. But like Legend of the Mist, there's no precedence for that because there's no specific thing. Like the entire intent is interpretation of context. Like you can't play the game if you're not going to try to interpret context. So
Yeah.
no one can claim this is exactly how this works because it's based on interpretation, right? You can all agree, I believe shooting a fireball into a house will catch it on fire. But, you know, if someone's going to be very particular, like, no, I don't think a house is that readily flammable or whatever, it's like, okay, cool. Then I guess to the burning the house down, like, challenge that we're currently doing, I'm not going to add the house as, like, a tag to see if this succeeds or not. Like, because the house isn't making, you know, the house being flammable isn't making it easier, so we just remove that part. Heck, you can even add that as a negative tag. The house is resistant to burning, right? -1. Boom. We don't need to talk about it more. We don't need to like rule around it more. Is this helping? Is this hurting? Move on. Is that easy? Counterpoint, jerks use wording to get around how spells are supposed to work to use a cantrip to anally execute bugbears with Thorn Whip. But hey, that's how 3rd level spells get homebrewed. I mean, yeah. And that's the thing, right? But those people are oftentimes arguing about context. Because it's not about any specific word or like game term, but an interpretation of the wording of how a spell is like written, right?
I mean, it's the eternal annoying bit of, hey, GM, can I use mending?
Yeah, can
for,
I
like,
use mending to heal
healing.
someone's wounds? And the simple answer to that is, does the spell say you can use this to do that? No, then it doesn't. You know?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. Like, unless a spell explicitly states that has an effect that does a thing, everything else is trying to be interpretive through context. Which GM fiat, but is not how the rules are written or are designed, you know?
Mhm.
So, we segued into this. I think when it comes to D&D, right? Because let's get this out there. Let's say this straight up front. If you're a tabletop player who's played for an extensive amount of time and who've played other games, there is a lot lacking in D&D right? And I think it's completely okay to like D&D as a framework to build off of, because at the end of the day, there are some framework there that I think does work really well. I mean, a lot of it is the very standard, right? We use the D20 to determine the percentages, you know, like chance of doing a thing versus not doing a thing. Your weapons hit and deal damage dice. That's a thing that we've been doing for a long time. Spells have range, spells hit in a grid, you know, people can move so many spaces. Even advantage disadvantage, even though advantage disadvantage I think is done poorly in D&D, there's a lot of games where advantage disadvantage I feel like works a lot better, and there's a lot of mechanics places where advantage and disadvantage can work better. I just feel like they should just constrain what advantage and disadvantage can be applied to, and it'll start like feeling better.
Because like as the game kind of works in its current state, there is like an incentive for players to just try to wriggle advantage into anything they can, but having it be like a more mechanic based thing, because like Cosmere system has the same like thing with D20 advantage disadvantage, but I think a difference is that gamified wise you can have there are direct rules of why it's popping up, rather than like, let me try to finagle for every little thing.
And let me also give a shout out to Cosmere. Man, more games need to apply the Graze mechanic that they introduced.
I agree. I think that's a really good one.
Because nothing is worse than playing a D20 game and missing and doing nothing on your turn.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible.
It's what makes like having played extensively in both camps, like, again, not trying to just do a D&D shit session, but like, man, spellcasting in D&D sucks. It doesn't feel good after you've done Pathfinder spellcasting.
Yeah.
Because your turns are so baby mode easy. Like, especially for like a class that has the class identity of like, I'm playing the smart, intelligent like character. Having a class that's basically your turn order is I cast this spell, do people save? No, okay, this is what happens. And then like not much else. It's like I don't get to do a lot else interesting things, and I don't get to express that the character is intelligent, is really just save or suck. Like, and then that's your turn.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean maybe I should have worded the today's chat differently, because I think that's a legitimate like complaint, right?
Yeah, it's a complaint where like, because I don't think it would be like needs to be like us having a shit on session, because like there are problems, but like I think there are legitimate reasons, and I've been told the like reasons in my own experience out and about and nerddom, where I've heard people explain why do they prefer D&D, and I think there are some fair reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said at the beginning of the stream, no matter what we say, a lot of people play the game and like playing the game. They don't play the game once or twice and then never play it again. Some people do, but when we're talking about the popularity of D&D, right, it comes with the understanding that a lot of people are playing the game continuously and want to play continuously, you know?
And I think there's a failing that can happen. It's in so many fields, but I think it is not a good way to view, as some people kind of do, of you look at something that's super popular and like really loved, and your first response is, well, everyone else is wrong. I don't think should be your first question. Yeah. I think your first assumption should be, well, there's probably a reason why so many people like it. Because if you get in your own head that like in some way the thoughts you have in your brain are more unique, better, and like significant than everyone else's, I think that's a road to go on to become insufferable. But like there might just, I think it's an easier assumption to make immediately. It's like, well, there's probably something I just don't see, or something that like I can understand, but I just kind of differ. And like those are healthier ways about it.
Yeah.
Because like I don't think the strength of a game is like as purely, oh, it's just so malleable. Because I do think D&D, when people say that it's a really good framework to play the games that they want and like allows them to really modify, I think it's fair. I think D&D actually creates a very simple framework that you can modify super easily. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's that. Because it's just on its head, what is D&D, but I roll a d20 and add a modifier. And then from that, you can do a lot of things with it. I mean, like, we have a friend who's done that. I think his version of D&D is really interesting and like actually creates like some tactical, like interesting bits. It is just like, do I think the some parts of the framework are still little annoying hangovers? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But he's explained to me why he can't fully fix some of those bits, and I understand that it's unreasonable to expect that to be homebrewed. Or just like it's too much. Because I told him about spellcasting. I'm like, D&D spellcasting just sucks. He's like, I mean, I understand, but like, let me just lay out what I'd have to do. And I'm like, that's super fair. I'm gonna turn this from like a can you adjust your system to can I complain about it to you, like in that moment, because it's like I'm not gonna put that work on your shoulders. But man, I hate 5e casting.
Yeah.
Like that is, I think, I don't think it's a strength of the system, but I think that is a completely understandable draw for the system to really love how much you can work with it as a like essentially a modding base. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, and so here's I guess we'll talk about this particular topic. So the framework for it is simple, right? Because I believe Pathfinder's framework is better and stronger and works better. How they've added a few things makes it more balanced, easier to run. Like, for instance, in Pathfinder, when you have damage resistance, it's a number, so you subtract that number from damage you receive. That's good. In D&D, when you have resistance to a thing, you cut that damage in half. But the thing is, in D&D, then when you say resistance, it's immediately obvious what it is that is happening. But in Pathfinder, when you mention resistance, it has to have a number associated with it. And whether that's good or not actually depends on the scale of the game, what level of the game you're in. But in D&D, resistance is resistance, and it's always good from level 1 to level 20, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So D&D's like basic rule framework is exactly that. It's a basic rule framework. Weapons have damage dice. When you roll your damage, you take that damage die, you roll it, and then you add your appropriate stat modifier to it. Very simple, very easily laid out. It could be more complicated. It could be designed like in Pathfinder, for instance. It scales, right? You get weapon runes that are kind of just in the game's balance that give you more dice. And so it's like at each individual phase of the game, this is how much damage dice we're expecting you to roll. But in D&D, that doesn't really change, you know? Like, sometimes you get runes that add extra damage dice to what you're doing, but the damage of your weapon, base damage, doesn't really change as you go up in level at all. So everything else is, like, layered on top of that. And we talked about, you know, advantage, disadvantage. The attribute system, I think D&D just needs to do the same thing that Pathfinder does to make it make more sense. I think we need to get rid of the sacred cow of the, oh yes, modifiers are actually 10, or your attribute minus 10 divided by 2, you know, like.
Is that actually what the thing is?
Yeah. So, for instance,
I didn't know there was math behind it, I'll be super honest.
Yeah,
I
so
just
like
thought...
a modifier of 12, right? Or a attribute of 12, right? Subtract 10, it's 2, minus, or divide by 2, 1. So you have a +1.
Yeah, it's that, because I've never heard the equation for it. I just always was like, yeah, I guess like a 12 is a 1, 14 is a 2. Because like, yeah, that's even more in the case of why not just make it a +2?
Yeah, right.
Or just make it a 2. Is
because
it just because the D20 and you want to have it go up to 20?
Because when it was originally created, the ability modifier was kind of like this baseline, right? 10 was the baseline. People who have less than 10 strength were weaker, and people who had more than 10 strength were stronger. Plus, in older editions, you also had attribute damage, and characters could die if their attribute hit 0, you know?
That's fair. I mean, I think, doesn't D&D 5e have that still? I think there's a
know if
creature
5e
that
does.
drains your strength.
I know yeah. There are some spells that do drain your stats. It's just less of a mechanic than it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, less things can do it because obviously it's annoying, but
I think banshees can do that.
yeah. And the thing is, though, is they could just change the modifiers, and they could say if you ever reach -5 in an attribute, you die.
Yeah, like there's options for it. It's there's little bits where I think that it's the things it's holding on to are holding it back, but like I think I'm thinking through, like I'm running through the memory Rolodex of all the
Right.
conversations I've had about D&D with people who are big D&D fans, and I've been like pretty honest where I'm like, this game's fine, I just don't think it's as interesting as others, and I think you should look at these other games. And the resistance I get largely is there's stuff that I can interpret as the jump into learning a new system right now isn't appealing because like either we don't have a lot of time to play or like the criticisms I hear, because one of my favorite conversations I had was with this one guy. I was covering our local game store, helping them out. I just covered a shift where they needed. And I talked to some dude who shows up all the time. He's really cool. And we were talking about just tabletop, and I was telling him, like, you know, the way you talk about D&D, I feel like you'd really like Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And he's like, I've tried it, I don't fuck with it. I'm like, okay, I want to know why, because I love that game. Like, why do you not like it? And largely, a big thing he had was where it's the difference of interpretation of just when does more rules help. Because the reasons we advocate for Pathfinder 2e actually being a game that's easier to run, like in the long term, he's talking about of there is a part of like any single thing you're doing in Pathfinder, there's the worry as a GM that there is in the exact wording somewhere else that tells you you're doing it wrong, and thus like you need to search and find it. When instead D&D gives you the framework to judge in the moment and like have that be almost like a conversation with the table to understand how to move forward with something that might be like rules adjacent.
Yeah.
And so the implication of having all the rules builds a game that has like, you need to run this exactly as written. When D&D, how it's written, feels a lot more open to just introducing stuff on the fly without issues popping up. I was like, I think it's a fair answer. I don't personally, it's the kind of fair answer where like, I don't agree with it. Like, I'm not going to like switch my opinion, but like, I can understand how playstyle can affect some of those kind of decisions.
Yeah, well, and this actually is very interesting because it leads into what was going to be my opening point. There's a aspect of why a lot of people really like D&D that I hate, and it is player choices. Because in D&D, you don't make a lot of choices as like a particular class. You pick what your subclass is. And then you're given everything. As you level up, you're given things. Like if you're spellcasters, you choose your spells. Sure. But there's not a lot of feats. There's not a lot of things that you select. And base rules, you have to choose between a feat or, a stat boost. And and for a lot of people, this is really good, actually, right? Because then they don't have to worry about making choices and making a build. You want to play a Forge Cleric, you choose to play a Forge Cleric, and then you just get the stuff as you level up, And in Pathfinder, every even level you're choosing a new feat, in every odd level you're choosing new skill increases and new skill feats, and so there's a lot of things, but you build together to make your own thing. But in D&D, what really makes it appealing, right, is you don't have to worry about making good choices as you're playing through the character. Now, sure, you can always choose to multi-class, but even then, right, that's when you're starting to get more granular. It's not necessary for the game to play, necessarily. And if you play something like Baldur's Gate, right, you're not multi-classing a ton in Baldur's Gate, typically. You're kind of just letting your character level up and do as you do, because the game...
It basically depends how meta you want to get. I only bring this up because I found a series on TikTok of somebody talking about like how to make these crazy builds in Baldur's Gate, and they all are just multi-class.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Well, because it's
But
based on D&D, right?
yeah, exactly. And like there, because the point it makes is that there are just like, which is the D&D point, is like there are some classes where multi-classing out of it really quickly is actually kind of better for you.
Yeah.
Like 2 levels of warlock, like with paladin, and like rogue was a big one, because a big flaw of rogue was like rogue is cool, but like you dip into rogue so you can get sneak attack and these like extra abilities, and then you leave to a better class because like rogue doesn't get multi attack and all this. And I'm hearing this, and all like the mean part of me is just listening to someone say this is how you make these complicated good builds, and I'm thinking of all the CRPGs I've played with significantly more options. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Oh man, you clicked a different level option. That's suddenly so much more complicated.
Yeah.
Not like the game does it for you. But like, I only bring that up because the meta stuff is always just, check out my unique build. I actually am playing a warlock paladin.
Right, rather than a paladin warlock.
Or just a straight normal paladin. I dipped into warlock for the invocations. It's like, wow, crazy.
Yeah, it's the same thing for ancestries, right? You pick an ancestry, you just get the things the ancestry gives you, and there's nothing else. Pathfinder, picking an ancestry, there's a lot of choices, right? Like, what ancestry feat do you select? Do you choose a lineage feat at level 1, since you can only select them at level 1? Or do you do a versatile heritage, right? You know, am I a dwarf with am I a dwarf changeling? You know, all this kind of stuff. In D&D, you're just the race. That's it. You get the things the race gives you, the modifiers, the whatever extra things they get, special powers, and that's it. And like, again, this is not something that I like, but this is something that people who play the game like, you know, because it's just less, right? There's less barriers to get to playing the game. And for a lot of people, that's fine, especially because, and this is like a wild thing, a grand majority of D&D players and games mostly play in like one-shot or short adventure styles. Like, even though I know the ideal is the long adventure, and a lot of people still do the long adventures, not everyone has the consistency enough to do that. So a lot of people are either starting new campaigns over and over and over again, or are just doing one-shots because that's what they have time to do, you know, regularly. They can't dedicate to a whole campaign.
Yeah. And like, there is, wait, there's a, yeah, there we go. There's an element too with it where, it's been on my mind a bit, like as of today and yesterday, because it's another bit that's been prompted by TikTok, is the part that I think is really important to remember, especially for us talking about it publicly on like a stream, given our thoughts and takes and everything. There's always an element that kind of comes up with hearing and realizing like a base level and like at our level of just being fully invested in a hobby, being people who are like super invested, where like the baseline is just kind of different. There's a thing going on TikTok right now that I think people like us would be shocked by, where there's some big drama right now with book talk because there was a popular video of some girl talking about how when she's reading, she gets really angry when she has to like Google the definition of a word, and that authors need to simplify their language. The word was scry, by the way. Yeah. And there were a lot of people agreeing with her and talking about like how basically they want authors to dumb down their language. Then it turned into like an author claiming that if you're making fun of people requesting that's ableism. I think the idea of lumping in people with actual learning disabilities and frankly just incurious people is kind of worse. It's kind of more bad. But all it does is also remind me of an XKCD webcomic where it makes a joke about just when everyone's trying to compensate for it, experts in anything wildly overestimate the average person's familiarity with their field. Is like the overall point. And there's some extents where with D&D, inevitably, we're always going to hear the take of why does someone like it or still like it, and for us it's going to be like the I don't understand, or like I think the reason you're saying is really goofy. Because like D&D, as I've seen it and talked to people about it, there's like two paths you go. One path is the path that we take, where you play it for a bit, you like it, but after a year or two, you realize this is it.
Yeah.
It's like that feeling. I remember that feeling pretty strongly of like, so is there anything else I can do? Or is it just this? And I was like fiending for more books like Tasha, because Tasha is like Cauldron. It's such a good book because it adds like so much extra toys. But then after that, you're just like, okay, so is there anything else? Is this it? And so then to do that, people will jump to different games. And those people will like get into more deep games, and because they want more stuff to do. And then there's other people who I don't even think it's like a worse thing to take this path. Some people just never have that feeling. They stay in it because they're like, yeah, this is everything I could want is in here. And like they don't have that jump of is this it, and they kind of view it as like perfect, this is my ideal. They don't seek anything out because they're like, why would I have there feels like to a lot of people when they talk about it with me, and I've spoken to them, it feels like a big issue is it doesn't feel like there's an incentive for them to leave, because in their head they're like, I like this game, I know this game, my friends all know this game, and there hasn't been a situation where I've wanted to do something and couldn't, that D&D couldn't do, so there's been no reason for them to jump ship. And like I feel like it's the same with some video games, obviously. Like, I mean, whenever you look at a CRPG or RPG and you see the auto level button, I feel like there's a lot of us who scoff at that. It's like, why would you not want to fiddle with your build?
Right.
There's probably a chunk of people who are like, oh, thank fuck, the game does it for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to make an analogy that I think is going to make a lot of sense. It's, especially for people who play in D, right? Are they very nearsighted or farsighted? Because people who are very nearsighted in the TTRPG space, in this example, or in this metaphor, they're very focused on their character sheet, right? What can they do? What can the character do, mechanically speaking? But the people who are very farsighted, right, it's not about what their character can do mechanically. It's about the story and what they're doing and all the fun they're having, right? And so when you ask them, you know, hey, do you want to play this complicated game? They're like, I don't fuck with my character sheet. My character sheet's there to help me play the game, but that's it. I'm here for the story, right? It's a lot less appealing to force them to look at something that's just not something they're more wanting to engage with. But people who like the mechanics, like the game, like the character sheet aspects of it as well, you know, they're going to get bored in D&D because the mechanics are not designed in a way to be very deep and like that you can tinker with. Because there's a lot of people like, oh, you can tinker with D&D builds all the time. Yes, but are we honestly saying that whatever you're tinkering you're doing is not just going to beat out the meta? Because the meta builds in D&D are so ridiculously strong that any tinkering you're doing is just for fun, right? It's just for flavor more than it is for like what your capabilities actually are in the system. And in other games, that's less the case, right? You can actually tinker your builds to do things more specifically because there are not these meta-defining builds that are just so capable and strong.
Like, it's the difference of like, yeah, that idea of builds, because I mean, there's just builds that have shorthand names that are just common because like I wouldn't even say D&D has like insane build potential. It feels like there's just 15 builds that you could opt into playing, and like the only thing that makes them not essentially class or like ascension things is that they're not official, because like Bard lock is a thing for a reason. It's because like Bard is cool, and it's even better if you dip into 2 levels of Warlock, because dipping into 2 levels of Warlock is just super easy. Same with Paladin. Like Paladin Warlock is another thing.
Coffee
Charisma
lot.
casters are just easy. oh man, I have a crazy build. It stacks like a lot of AC. It's like, okay, let me guess. Are you in any way a Blade Dancer or are you a Forge Cleric?
Yeah.
Like that's yeah. There's routes to do things, and they're considered builds because they're not printed. And for some people, they see it and they're like, yeah, and that's what makes it cool. Because like there's these things I found, or it's just I've also interacted with these people who just straight up are not interested or like tapped into the tabletop community online. So in their head, they discover it and they get to live in the blissful ignorance of like there's not a forum somewhere talking about it like a common shorthand. And you know what? I'm happy for them. Stay off the internet, stay untapped in. You keep touching grass.
And that's why, like, my general idea of why people choose D&D is it's accessible, not accessible necessarily in the way that a lot of people like to associate with it nowadays, but it's accessible in the fact that it's such an easy game to interact with that doesn't offer a lot of resistance. And also, power is very easy to grasp, but is also simultaneously unnecessary because the game itself, right, the monsters in the game or whatever are not difficult enough for you to require having a super strong character, and the GM at the end of the day is just going to throw you what they feel is going to be an appropriate challenge. So you can make a really strong build, or you can make a not so strong build, and it really works the same either way. And if you make a really strong build, you get to feel like you made a really strong build. So, you know, there's games like Pathfinder where, again, the GM can throw appropriate challenges at you, but it has more engaging elements and more aspects to the combat that make it at least feel better. And then there are games out there that are just really hard that playing them standardly is intentionally really like difficult to do. Like Call of Cthulhu is well known for the fact that your characters are not meant to live long in Call of Cthulhu. That's kind of like the point. You're normal people dealing with Elder Tours. But it's D&D is just accessible. It's so easy to reach, and all you gotta do is like, hey, here's a number, roll your d20, add that number. Like, it's funny because even Critical Role, right, when they were first playing, they're like, oh, spellcasters, oh, these are hard. These are hard because they have so many spells that do things, you know.
It's like it's always that bit where I see it, and that's where I think about the the baseline information that we get,
right?
Like the difference of baselines, because there's always just for someone who's never interacted or has interacted very little with it. Oh yeah, that's 100%. It's like it's totally complicated and crazy, and I imagine it feels wild to like learn and play. But then for us, we look at it and we're like, yeah, this is nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a level where trying different games gives you an appreciation, I think, for how simple D&D is. Because my like standard thing, a lot of my experience with casual players, like I have a lot of experience teaching people how to play D&D 5e. Like I've been a lot of people's like first GM or first like table experience really. And so it was with Anima, like playing that, because that was my second ever other tabletop game.
Yeah,
Anima Beyond
Fans. To play for your second one.
I know, it's crazy, but like with that, that's what gave me the understanding of okay, so what are the differences between these games, and it gave me what I would then really work to counter some people, because it's the person who's like, I'm an expert in D&D 5e. And then hasn't played any other games that just immediately starts like overwhelming a new person, and where you cut through all the bullshit and you're like, listen, ignore everything about this, ignore how scary the sheet looks, you roll that dice, you add a number based on what I tell you, and then that's when I've seen a lot of people understand the game, because if you break it down to its absolute bare components, it's pretty simple. But sometimes you need the framework to understand what the baseline of your game is. And a lot of times it's stepping away from your game and looking at a different thing.
And that's why Pathfinder is rougher for people who play D&D, right? Because the baseline framework for what you're doing is just like a few more steps than what you do in D&D, right? Like when you get a buff in D&D, oh, get a plus to this check. Cool. Awesome. In Pathfinder, get a plus to this check. Okay, but what kind of bonus is this? Is this a circumstance, a status, or an item bonus? Right? Because you can't stack similar types of bonuses. And it's moments like that, or like, okay, you do the fears. There's like so many conditions, right, that in Pathfinder actually mean things and are very like particular. In D&D, there are still statuses, but they're a lot more. There's fewer, and they're a lot more. I can't say straightforward, because in Pathfinder they're honestly way more straightforward, but there's just fewer and they don't come up as often, I think, is a better way of putting it, you know. Like there's stun. What does frightened even do in D&D?
You cannot move closer to the creature.
You suffer disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of your fear is within your line of sight, and you can't move closer to it. So, that's the thing. But there's actually just not a lot of things in D&D where fear comes up, you know.
Dragons are like the one that I can name off the top of my head.
Yeah, they're one of the bigger ones, and some like spells and whatever. In Pathfinder, though, like anyone, if you have intimidation, can apply frightened, right? So there's a lot more small things. And again, like I said, nearsighted versus farsighted, right? If you're a farsighted player, you're just playing the game. You're there to have fun, and the fun part is the playing the little guys, right? Playing the weird little guys, weird goofy little characters. And like this is something I see when I watch live plays, because I sometimes go around and watch like random channel live plays. And when I ran games as for Adventure League, I ran games for 2 years, and what people were more interested in is the idea of their character and what they were doing in the scene, rather than like, there's a kid I had to explain week after week how Eldritch Blast worked.
Yeah.
But man, did he really want to play an evil warlock wizard character. That was like his idea, is like, I want to be this really smart villain character. He wasn't worried about how his character sheet reflected that. That's just how he played. That's what he wanted to play, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like we're playing two different types of games sometimes. Like, people who are more nearsighted, they're like, okay, what can my character do? All this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that they don't roleplay or anything like that. But instead, you're playing this game to have the mechanic and the game come together as one. We're not just here to tell a story. We're here to do, you know, we're here to play a game. And it's the best when those two things kind of come together nice and even. And for farsighted players, it's just about like the story and like what is the idea of my character and what I made my character fun, right? Because the game doesn't offer enough for you to actually make interesting characters. So you have to interpret the things that your character can do to be interesting. Because every time I see people like play characters, do all this kind of stuff, they either homebrew a thing or they reinterpret like what this system gives you to be cool. Like when you play Anima Beyond Fantasy, you don't have to reskin fucking anything because it's a really cool system. And the things that you would skin are things that you normally would skin, like your own unique key techniques that you made, you know. So it's D&D is a fun game. We need to stop pretending. If you're a hardcore tabletop player, we need to stop pretending that D&D isn't fun. And for those out there who are like, well, I don't think it's not fun, I just think there are more fun games out there. Yeah, but you have to understand that there are so many types of players, and they want to engage in games in certain ways, and D&D is just one of the best examples. Like, even as far as like rules light, right? Because there's a lot of people who are like, well, I feel like these people then who should play more rules light games, right? They don't want to have a lot of rules in the way, play something more rules light. It's like, Yeah, but we gotta think, is there a popular rules-like game that we can all think of right now that is like the same vibe as D&D fantasy?
Daggerheart is trying, but I don't know if it'll hit the same note.
Honestly,
no.
I've heard lots of good things about Daggerheart, and I think Daggerheart's doing really, really well. I don't think it has the same market appeal, but it's like as a game, a lot of people who are switching to it are really liking it because I think it does what a lot of D&D wanted to do better.
Which I'm glad to hear, because that is what I love. I love for people to have more options, really. It's just like it really is just a different market level right now, because it's what happens. Let me make sure. I hope my thing's working. Okay.
I hear you, yeah.
Good. Because it's just right now, and I don't think it'll go away for a bit. Not without like real effort from marketing and everything. D&D has just become whatever the business term is for. It is the game in the brand is ubiquitous with the genre.
Yeah.
Where it is people who say, "Oh, are you playing D&D?" instead of, and then you have to look at them and make that decision of, do I explain that I'm playing this completely different game? Do I have to explain to my parents right now what Anima Beyond Fantasy is? And who they're not going to get it. The conversation's going to be meaningless because in their head, they're asking me is, "Are you playing a tabletop game?" And I say yes. And they ask, "Did you win?" And I'm like, "Pretty much." So that's what my dad would do every time we came back from Adventure League. By the way, he would ask me if I won.
Yeah.
Because he knew that that's not how it worked, and so I kept saying, "Kinda, yeah."
Yeah.
Because for me, that meant my character didn't die. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like that's the thing, right? There's a lot of people who love the idea of playing in D&D, and there's not like a lot of rules like games that have the same vibe, right? Because a lot of times these rules like games, they kind of almost go too simplistic, right? Like, oh, you're playing these characters, but nothing feels very like weighty or tangible with the character options because they make it intentionally super vague and super flowy and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like we play D&D, right? Because it's just the game that most people know about, most people can grasp relatively quickly, and it has the vibe that people are looking for, which is, you know what? I'm gonna coin a new phrase right now: cartoon fantasy. Cartoon fantasy is how I describe D&D most of the time, and what I mean by cartoon fantasy is it's goofy and it's fantasy. It's the characters, like Legends of Evantris is the perfect example of cartoon fantasy. Like Critical Role kind of leans more into like the true high fantasy, right? But when you have people just playing goofy characters like Granny Turtle or whatever, that's cartoon fantasy. They just want to play some cartoon fantasy, and there's just not a lot of games out there that really appeal to cartoon fantasy, because even if there's some that are like a lot more light and a lot more fantasy, they don't have the weight of like what the game is trying to like. They pick it up, and even though it has they would like it more because it's so rules light, it feels less substantial and less important. And that's just kind of like a mental thing that people have to get around. So like the best game would be a rules light game that has the appearance of having like a lot of depth, but none of the actual like requirements of a deep game, none of the actual like attributes of a deep game.
Like, I think it's something I've talked about a lot is I think there is a vibe of a D&D game that is something you see, and it's something that like the vibe of a D&D game specifically is something strong. And there is because we all have I think there's a bunch of different really interesting like vibes. The mean term for it is like, I think every country has their own version of what fantasy slop is.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've seen coined online is Japan has the guild and the guild rankings.
Yeah.
Korea has some form of dungeon. China has cultivation, and then like I think America is a lot more of the like long journey, largely because of like Lord
The
of the Rings.
Tolkien-esque journey, yeah.
Yeah. And like that is a fantasy that I think is really fun. Like
Yeah.
there is something about the wandering heroes who like band together in unlikely circumstances and like have their own things of getting together, becoming like friends or basically family, saving the world or just saving people as they're traveling. There is something like that is just really its own, and like it hits different, and I think that that's something that's super appealing about D&D and the vibe of what D&D can give you. Then there's the other little tinier bits that I see people engage with who like aren't even in it, because cartoon fantasy I think is fair, like a fair description of it.
Yeah.
Because if someone doesn't want the vibe of D&D, that is like the very serious Critical Role like style. Well, Critical Role still has comedy, but like a good drama should have comedy in it because you need that to actually accentuate the drama.
Yeah.
But like there's parts of D&D that I think are mythologized that draw people into.
Yeah.
One interesting one that I see all the time is the weird NPC like you got that the players adopt as a joke who turns out to be really important.
Yeah.
The one that was like that blew up recently was fucking Fartbuckle. Rest in peace, Fartbuckle. Which used a Childish Gambino song, and it's just they had a goblin named Fartbuckle, and like in the last moment where they needed it, Fartbuckle like sacrificed himself to save the world. In this like, I had like thank you for giving me friends. Like I didn't know I didn't know what friends were before this, and like that moment is something I think that hits a lot of people. You can have your funny, goofy game, but I think a lot of people want that goofy cartoon game that sometimes goes for the gut punch.
Yeah, I mean that's a good example of like the Adventure Zone, right? They kind of went from cartoon fantasy to something a little bit more serious.
Yeah, the more the first season, the more that they went away from like they started with Mines of Phandelver, and I still think has one of my favorite jokes in it in the Mines of Phandelver part of that podcast of having the final boss who's just a very boring villain of that like story.
Yeah.
Do the swap of like, wait, no, I'm the real guy, I'm him, and then the mage who did it, he's had a comical German accent. He just like says, no, I am the real one. Like he immediately gives himself away, and like it's really funny, like having that moment. And then it goes to like there's a horrific gut punch later on, of those that know the part of wait, who are you again? Like that fucking hurts, man. Because I think Griffin's a good storyteller. Like that, there's a real strength in that, and it's what people's associations with it is. And like, I love me the really serious melodramatic campaigns, but like, there's a fun in like having a game that's very lighthearted that like pulls you in. Because if you're getting invested in your game, those lighthearted moments and like the funny bits, all they serve to do is endear you more to the world that you're creating with your friends. And then when you can pull those people in when there's a really serious threat to like the place that they've created in their imagination that's being threatened, or the characters that they're imagining being threatened. There's a real power to that.
Yeah. And you know, like I don't use cartoon fantasy derogatorily, right? It's just a very specific type of fantasy. And like cartoon fantasy leans very much into the sudden, like there's a lot of like anime and there's a lot of stories that have done this, right? It's very nice and fluffy up until a point, and then suddenly like everything falls out and it's suddenly way darker or suddenly way more serious. When
I hear cartoon fantasy, the thing I think of more is not like it is like a cartoon, or like I hear it in the way of like talk about like cartoon physics. Yeah. There are things that you can do in a cartoon that are different than if you were telling a live action story. There are things you can get away with. And also with a cartoon, like a lot of times, you have that like, I mean, Adventure Time did this. Like Adventure Time has the like its typical plots, but then everything with the Lich, where it's like a really genuine like oh fuck moment. Or I mean, even the Ice King's backstory in Adventure Time is something that's super sad.
Yeah. Right, and that's kind of based on cartoon fantasy, is like its core, right? It's a very silly, goofy world. All the characters are kind of weird, right? But then you start adding the more serious elements, and that's a part of cartoon fantasy, right? That's a thing that can be done with cartoon fantasy. It's not always about that. Sometimes it's about subverting expectations. That's a big part of cartoon fantasy too. And it doesn't have to be just like animated either. I say the D&D movie, Honor Amongst Thieves, is a cartoon fantasy.
Yeah, it's a really fun movie because of that.
Yeah, I like it.
It's fun.
It's a fun. It represents, I think, accurately the D&D experience.
Yeah, like it was a movie I walked away from. Like, was there a bunch of deep references? Like, I mean, kinda in the way that they named Waterdeep, and like there's locations and things. I was like, I know what that means.
Yeah, or
But,
Thordak
like,
the dragon. You know?
There's certain bits where I look at it and I'm like, you know what? I hope that this got people to want to play this, because this is like such a fun little story, and like it makes me really sad that for some reason like Hasbro viewed it as a failure, because it made people like their game, I guess.
I don't know, but like it's just it's even though it's a live action movie, right, and it's the fantasy adventure, it is a cartoon fantasy because it's all like they run away from a super fat dragon at one point. They get bypassed by the mind devourers because they're all just kind of dumb, you know. The paladin character, when he's walking away from everyone, he just walks in a perfect straight line, walks over a boulder, doesn't even go around it, you know.
Yeah, it's going on for way too long. It's like such a good bit.
Yeah.
Like also the side meta bit where it really feels like that's just like a friend who joined the campaign for a session.
Yeah.
Like that's the feeling of it, and I think it's a really fun extra meta layer to it.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's like there's nothing wrong with it. Again, I don't use cartoon fantasy as derogatory. It's just different than I feel like people who are more serious about tabletop want, right? Like I feel like people who are more serious about tabletop, like, not that they can't also just have their occasional cartoon fantasy game now and then, but they want more out of the experience, right? Because they love the hobby, they love what tabletop offers, which is the emotional storytelling, like the stories that you will remember for a long time, you know. And those kind of games come when everyone's kind of just on a little another level. They're a little bit more serious, you know. They're a lot more in character. They're a lot more trying to be immersed in the scene. And cartoon fantasy makes it a little bit harder for immersion. It's good fun, but it's not necessarily like the most immersive experience.
I think it depends on who you are, really. And also what you mean, what a type of immersion I think you're going for. Because I say that as someone who, like, I'm the person who can get immersed in, like, I got really immersed into Mass Effect, but the character I've been playing my Mass Effect trilogy with is Master Shepard, who I morphed his face into as best to the Halo helmet, and like that's been the weird bit. And so I've had a Goblin Man, but like I'm getting really into the story. Like regardless, there's some levels of friction that I think are different, because I think we are a group that like couldn't get immersed in a comedy game as easily, because there's a difference of like what the immersion is. But like there's elements with cartoon fantasy, I think, where there are people, and like maybe to some extent I can kind of do this, where that level of like the goofiness and levity is the immersion, because like the immersion is less of like, is this world truly a living, breathing thing versus is this world something I care about emotionally?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair. I put it more as like the idea, especially because it's a tabletop game with lots of people, right? I think some of the examples you give are some cartoon elements in something that is much more of like a standard kind of experience, right? Where cartoon fantasy more leans itself to like a player just doing something really weird, or everyone just like doing a weird thing for the sake of being weird just because it's funny and everyone laughs. It doesn't mean it's not a good time, doesn't mean it's all this kind of stuff. Yeah. It's just more in reference to like, you know, I'll evoke his name because it's a good point, even though I don't agree with anything about him. Arcadum, I remember watching one of the final episodes of one of his longer campaigns, they were like at the end of the world, and they were gonna go fight like the Reaper or something like that, and they all just took a moment to piss off the edge of the world. You know.
Honestly, that immerses me more, because that's something I would do if I was in that position.
Right, and that's the point I was trying to make, right? You can have that moment, right? You can have that cartoon fantasy moment that like comes together, everyone just like pisses off the edge of the world, you know. We're gonna go fight the Grim Reaper or whatever. And it's cartoon fantasy, but that can be a very immersive element. But then you can have Adventures League, right? Where it's so incredibly hard to be immersed because everyone's just doing cartoon shenanigans and no one's really like trying to work together to play the game or anything like that.
Yeah, it's I mean, to add another term, slapstick fantasy, where it's like the stakes it's being acted like there's no stakes, and everything is kind of like, haha, it'll be undone in the next episode kind of thing. Where that can get to that level, because I agree with that completely. I just think with the idea of cartoon fantasy, and the part that's attaching itself to me as like a term is I think it describing the level of tone is really, really good.
Yeah.
And I think it's just everyone has their own lines of like what gets you immersed. Some people it's really strict. Like I bring up my dad, because my dad straight up cannot make that jump of like we are people at a table.
Yeah.
Like in a basement. And like that is a thing he cannot separate. And because of that too, he like that's why he, like many other people of this generation, do not like anything animated, because he can't like immerse himself into that. But it's the same way of like even for things that are very cartoon fantasy like Adventure Time, I think there's a difference with it where is it going to be as immersive as some very like draw you in Game of Thrones style, just something that feels like, oh man, this is so fleshed out. But like, do you care about the Ice King when his backstory is being revealed? And like, does that elicit an emotion? I think it's a different type of immersion.
Yeah.
Where so I think I wish there was just another word for like what is the different type of immersion that you're getting out of it, because I think that sometimes it's the emotional like you draw in you're getting, because a lot of people with the ideal version of that cartoon fantasy campaign is they're all goofing and a gaffing, they're having the fun time, maybe based on like seeing fun actual plays, but like they'll care and they'll be drawn in. And it's the people who give you the GM advice of like use the backstory, twist the knife. It's the player who is having the like I piss off the end of the world move, or I do the funny thing, but like will legitimately take it seriously when like you threaten their character's parents.
Yeah.
Like that is, I think, what a lot of people ideally want. And there isn't like some trick, I think, that a lot of GMs talk about. Like there's a trick to make a player like that. I think every person is just different.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get the people all together who find the perfect tone, and like it just fits so well with them.
Yeah, to talk about myself, right? I would struggle in a game that doesn't make sense, right? That's just it's goofy and nothing, like there's no logical sense or rhyme or reason why anything happens. It's just like for a bit. It's just there to be silly, you know? I struggle with that kind of stuff because for me, I want to get into character. I want to get into the moment. I want to be in the scene. I want to be able to react as my character would react in the scene. Even if I'm playing a goofy character, even if I'm playing a silly character, there has to be some grounding foundation for like how he acts and why he would act in a certain way. And if characters are just saying something that are super like contradictory, or there's major plot holes, or there's just something established that then gets, you know, like turned back on or whatever, it would be hard for me. It'd be hard for me, even if it's all for jokes, right? Even if it's all for fun, even if it's all just like for the sake of a bit, I couldn't do it. It's just not, I don't have that kind of role play flexibility to make the most out of those kinds of scenes. And That's why the games I run are not really cartoon fantasy ever. Like I have goofy characters. I'll have silly characters come in, but they're always goofy and silly within the context of the world, and they make sense relatively speaking. Like one of my favorite goofy characters I introduced was Jack the Pigeon Lord.
Oh yeah.
Just this street urchin kid who got a reputation for being a pigeon lord because he spent time eating the food people threw out for the pigeons that they wanted, you know? And then he
Yeah.
met the party, and then they gave him like just enough money to like get started. And dude was an entrepreneur. Like he went on and started inventing really random things like the tent backpack and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, he was like some of his inventions you look at and you're like, yeah, man, they actually have a that's a good idea.
But he was a silly character. He was a goofy guy,
yeah.
you know?
There's like, because inherently, there's like the level you can take stuff like that where a character like that is still the character. Like, because when you look at it too, you're also, there's an element that's like, man, I kind of feel bad for this kid.
Yeah.
Because that's just someone who's like, at least has a really good outlook on a horrible situation. But like, yeah, there's the levels where, because I've always been somebody who, my line for me is largely emotional investment. Because, it comes from just how I engage with art, because I view tabletop as like basically the same thing. Where for me in art, a lot of times the point of it that you're trying to get and draw you in is like the emotional core of it, not like the exact mechanics of everything or the story of everything. And so I could get myself drawn into a cartoon fantasy game if I think everything is being played fine, because there's just a level where if it starts getting to slapstick, that's when I stop caring, because like there needs to be the emotional core in the middle of it. But if it's like everything is meaningless and like and for the purpose of a joke, it's like, well, no. Then I just kind of hate it because it's a bad comedy. And like a good comedy gets you to care and like has a nugget of vulnerability in it. And it's bad art when you can't do that. And so like I can get drawn in, I can get pulled because but like as long as everyone has the same investment of emotional care. So I've never been somebody who's had issues with like plot holes or, I mean, I literally keep saying my favorite thing is JoJo.
Right.
JoJo is something that I think is a form of art that if you engage with it as it's meant to, which as Araki has stated, his purpose of it is himself becoming the best manga author he can, and JoJo is a method for him to improve his craft. And when you take it in like the non-literal form that it kind of wants you to engage with it, then I think JoJo just becomes not as like complicated as people make it out to be. Where things are pretty straightforward, and because it's based on the rules of if Araki says it in the text, then yeah, it works like that. If he doesn't, then it doesn't.
Right.
And like that's in because there's a Northern Line quote I adore. I think there are people online who get really hard into this. Like, thankfully, none of us. But there's a really funny Northern Line bit where he's talking about movies he likes, and he gets annoyed with chat because internet chatters are always going to be really obnoxious. But he talks about like there's some times where you don't have the artistic yearning in your heart. I think if you as an adult pick a story because as your favorite because it makes the most sense instead of the thing that pulls at your heart the most, you should probably get into baking because that's just chemistry instead of, you know, a full like art expression. Because I can't get drawn in for like the people that go so serious there's literally 0 times where we can have fun and be levity, because that's not realistic, like at all. The people that describe in some of it's the channels that we're not big fans of, the comment sections I've seen of how people describe their games, I'm like, I think I'd hate your game, man.
Yeah.
Because it's the opposite direction. It's like there's no emotional core. Because I like ours where like all of us have this level of care and want and like emotion behind everything. And so like there's a reason to get invested. And then there's a mechanical reason to get invested because I think we're rewarded for investment too.
Yeah.
But like there's all these levels where you got to find like whatever the balance is for your party. Like what level of fun do they all want? But like I think it's the adage we kind of keep playing at in our games just through history of I think your campaign has reached a point where it might have these issues if you can't tell like maybe a 30-minute segment of like your characters going to get like talking about like what their favorite candy is,
Right.
and like going to buy it at the next city. There's that level of like, is it as productive to the plot? No, but there's some level of like vulnerability behind a lot of that, and like you need those moments, I think, in your story, because then it makes when those characters are ripped away way harder.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, can you care about enough about your character to say what their favorite food is, what their favorite sweet is, you know? Because if you can't even do that much, then like, obviously you're playing for more mechanical gameplay reasons than you are for like actual character stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because
like at that point, you're playing a build. You're not playing a character, and if that's what your table wants to set out to do, that's fine.
yeah,
But if like you're the only person like that, not saying you need to completely change, but like give it a try.
you know, like it's always a thing where sometimes you just got to make your character have just a very human hobby or like preference or whatever. You know, a character becomes infinitely more interesting when you guys go out to eat and your guys like, oh, I hate shellfish. I just don't like how it tastes. It's just so gummy and gooey and fishy. Ugh. You know, that is instantly humanizing and instantly like, oh, I totally get what this guy's about, you know?
Yeah, and like you can also play it up because like there's, you know, people have interests, and sometimes like maybe your character's embarrassed that this is a hobby of theirs. There's the other really fun version that's like, picture you're with like the barbarian or something, and like it's a rare moment where two people get to like chat, and then it's like, well, do you have any hobbies? And like the giant 7-foot tall wall of muscles, like, I like whittling. It's like, you do? Like that moment of just like, huh? But why haven't you mentioned this? Like, you haven't asked. Like, huh? Okay. Like those kind of moments of just like, there's little elements of humanity in there, because also like there's an element of it where and it's the reason I don't like the full other direction of like pure mechanical logical storytelling, because like human beings are inherently like contradictory. There are enjoyments and things that people like that when you hear it you're like, really? Like, you like that? It's like, yeah, because like there's parts that appeal differently to everybody, or someone might have a hobby or an interest that goes against their perception. Having those elements baked into a person, I think, is a little bit more interesting, in the same way that like a character holding two kind of contradictory ideals might be narratively interesting, because that's just something that happens. Like we've all probably encountered it where it's mind bending when you catch it, but that's people.
Yeah. I don't know how we got on this topic now that I think about it.
Well, I think it's talking about like, I think it still builds to our overall point of this, where the appeal of D&D, I think, is this, there's a very specific vibe.
Yes.
There's a very specific vibe it brings, and I think it's super fair to want that vibe and believe that D&D is the best thing to give it to you, because the vibe is cool. I think it's not D&D specific. I think you can hit this vibe with other games, but like it's just gonna follow the same take I have about art. Is that again, I view these as one and the same. I view a tabletop story as the same level of like art and artistic expression as like a movie, a book, anything like that. The thing that actually does it isn't fully like how you run your game, what DM tricks are you running. I think a big element of it is vulnerability and heart, because a thing that there's a very just amorphous feeling when someone gives a shit that is hard to grasp unless you can truly do it. And it's something I'll constantly push for, because I feel like we've been in a long writing age where vulnerability and like heart is kind of viewed down, instead of like, let's make a bit out of it, let's be ironic, let's do all this, where it doesn't land as good for those genres unless you have that like real emotional core in the center of it. Doesn't have to be like, oh, there's parts where the story takes itself seriously, because like, for example, I think Smiling Friends is a really funny example of like how to make a how to make something kind of slapstick and wild and crazy, but still feel like something you can invest yourself in.
Yeah.
Largely because I think the fun of it is it's an insane cartoon world where some of the characters treat it like this is normal and like realistic. My favorite conversation is like this season 2 where there's like, isn't that beautiful, Charlie? He's like, no, actually, I gotta be honest with you, Pim. I hate living here. What? Yeah, no, this world stresses me out, Pim. Things happen just constantly around me, and it's way too much and way too overstimulating.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's fair. That is how someone who lives in that world would feel. Because, like, you're just walking down a hallway and, like, there's random violence happening. Like, or just crazy bullshit. Because, like, that story doesn't take itself fully seriously. Not at all. It's a full 100% comedy. That's the intent of it. Yeah. But the difference is, like, you can feel how much raw creative effort was put into every single part of that show. And, like, that's where the core is. That's where the real part is. And there's also, like, there are episodes that are legitimately from a real place. The finale of season 1 comes from, like, legitimately, it was Zach Hadel and Michael Cusack were in a very kind of dark spiral a lot of people have gone to it during COVID of just, like, realizing your life's somewhat falling apart. You're just like, all I do all day is I go home, I play Rust in the dark, and I order DoorDash. And they wrote that episode from the perspective of, like, this is something you need to change. Like, you can't fully live like this. You do need to, like, go outside and enjoy things. And like that, there's that level. It gets you drawn in, it gets you pulled. I think there are pure comedies that do it worse because they forget to have that core.
There we go.
And so do that for your games.
Yeah. And you know, and so that's exactly it. You know, I think there are a lot of TTRPGs out there that demand a level of, like, seriousness, right? I don't think you can have a proper cartoon fantasy if you're playing Warhammer, because that's not why you would play Warhammer.
And, like, you can have jokey moments or anything like that, but the world itself is dark, and then the fun and the humor can come from, like, how funny it can randomly get. But, like, the story itself, you can't tell a long, interesting Warhammer story that is pure 100% comedy. Even, like, the two series that are Caiaphas Cain and The Infinite and the Divine are funny books, but, like, they're funny in the characters that are inhabiting the world that take it seriously.
Yeah.
And then there's still serious threats that come up.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, what makes the moments funny is the juxtaposition from the normally dark and dour, like, world that is around them.
I'd say Call of Cthulhu is probably another game that having it be a goofy, funny comedy kind of takes away from what you're trying to play.
Yeah, like, if you can't take the horrors seriously, because, you know, you open the door and there is a large butt with tentacles. It's like that's not Call of Cthulhu at that point, you know.
No.
That's you're just telling a goofy thing. And so, and I bring this up, right, that there are some games that kind of demand a level of seriousness because that's what D&D offers, right? It offers the cartoon fantasy is kind of like its default. Like, maybe not cartoon fantasy as its default, but that's just kind of what a lot of people do with it anyway. Because its default is high fantasy, right? The world is supposed to be serious. It's supposed to be a fantasy world that invokes a higher fantasy, like Tolkien-esque experience. But a lot of people, especially because what a lot of people do is they see people playing the game, and those people are playing the game very cartoon fantasy. And that's what draws people into it. But, like, that's the thing, and that's what draws people into playing this kind of thing is I want to have a fun adventure. I want to role play as a character and do these kind of things and have these kind of adventures. Like, I think, like, what separates me from one of these kinds of people is I think, what can my character do that's interesting and, like, mechanically fun? You know, like, that's why I like playing Legend in the Mist, honestly, is narratively and contextually, my characters can play in a lot of different ways based on the context of what's happening. But then the D&D players are like, how can I play my character in a really fun and silly way, right? They're like, all right, here's my general build because I kind of like this class. I picked these abilities because I thought they were good. But now I'm going to play Granny Turtle, you know, whose good berry is actually like her little muffins that she carries around in her basket. And for shits and giggles, I gave her a lot of features that make her really defensive. So when she curls into her shell, she has a 22 AC. And like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, it's funny, right? Because it's like, oh, Granny Turtle is as hard to hit as a dragon, you know?
And also, like, it's funny. It's baked into the like it being a funny moment when inevitably Granny Turtle kills a guy.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's like, whoa, Granny.
What are you doing? It's just like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, like there's a lot of bits that'll come with that concept, and like there's probably for other people, because I'd play that as a joke, and then have some occasional moments. But there's definitely ways you could probably tell a character like that fully serious 100%.
Yeah.
But like, because there's the degrees of it, is it going to be pure comedy, but also like the idea of making everyone really care? It's a fun reaction, like a test to be like, okay, how endearing of a character can you make? Because that character works at its strongest when you get every single person to really love Granny Turtle like they're like the grandmother they never had.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
then
mean,
it makes it so much scarier when she's almost killed because something gets through the AC.
and that's depth, right? That's depth, but from a not gameplay standpoint, from a not TTRPG standpoint. That's depth in the, how can I play this character? It doesn't really matter what their stats are and everything. How can I play this character in the most interesting, immersive way, you know? I think Legend of Adventures really leans into that. Is their builds, like, if I was to ask most people what classes the characters were, I would say most people wouldn't even know. I know Frosty's class from like the Witchlight stuff they did.
He's like a psionic.
No, he's a sorcerer.
Okay, I know he has psionic stuff.
But I can't tell you what Mace was. I can't tell you what Chuckles was.
I think Mace was a fighter. The Goblin, I forget his name. He was a
Gricko?
druid. Gricko has, because he has the bugbear. I think Remy is a warlock. I think the bugbear was a rogue. But like, I also say that because like only reason I remember is because I've read their little character tags on the stream said what the class was, but like I've never seen them play the actual fights because I mean I also don't like listening to fights.
And even
so
then you
when
were
they're
rather
not-
unsure, so I think the point
Yeah.
still stands that like
the point stands that I'm doing this. But like meanwhile, if I look at Dimension 20, I can pretty much more confidently name like what the characters are. Some of which I think is like a bit more interesting because they've had people be really annoying about it.
Right.
Because purely it's just the fact that they've played these characters for a long time and they know that the table is a safe spot to play something weird that's not optimal.
right.
Because like Gorga from a barbarian to an inventor barbarian.
Yeah.
And like largely because he got a thing to bump up his intelligence, and like he thought it would be more fun because as Zach Oyama was saying is like he found straightforward barbarian to be really boring.
Right.
He just wanted something else to do. It was the exact same for Emily, playing what's her name, Tiefling, Bard, who then changed into like partially warlock, partially like she has like 3 multi-classes.
Yeah.
And it's purely because Emily as a player wants to do interesting things and not good things.
Yeah.
And the exact same thing with their Fairy Tail one, because like her character in that one's like a barbarian rogue or something. And it's purely because she wants to tell the story of Red Riding Hood, who has like a rage problem and is weirdly strong for being a small girl, but is also like, I grew up in the woods alone. And like, because of that, the character's interesting. Are they going to be completely meta? No. But like, they will happily say, I don't want to play meta, I want to play what's fun.
Yeah. And that's why I love Legend of the Mist, because a lot of these ideas can translate just so much better, and you can make your character good at the kind of things you want to do through their story tags. The fact that, you know, the tag Little Red Riding Hood can be used in interesting ways and can be juxtaposed with rage problems as a tag.
Yeah.
You know, because they're like, okay, I'm Little Red Riding Hood. I just look like a little girl. Can can I just like walk past these people or be ignored because I'm just a little kid? It's like, sure, use that as a tag. You know, that's a thing that can apply in that scene. And then you can't do that in D&D as much because who cares if you're a Little Red Riding Hood? Like, that's the thing, right? But I'm going to shit on some D&D right now at the very end of why D&D is good. Chat. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, mechanically or gameplay-wise or even, like, effective-wise, right? Like, even if I take mechanics out of it and just, like, what can my character do and not do in the setting? What you make your character, who your character is, whatever, almost doesn't matter completely because none of that is like actionable through systems or whatever. The GM can of course determine like, okay, yeah, you look like a little girl, sure, you can walk by these people without being directly noticed, sure, but that's not the intent of the system, that's not the intent of the design. And I feel like people trying to play these fun, silly little builds or whatever, they're just like, I have a really fun idea. Let me twist this system. Let me twist the system's arm to try to like allow me to play this idea. Is it meta? No, but like I see these options that let me do it, right? And it's not the only game that, like, Pathfinder is arguably worse when it comes to something like this, you know. That's why I like Legend of the Mist, right? Because you can make that goofy character concept and the tags are meaningful and can do things and imply things in the setting. And it's more fun that way because then you get to use weird part about your character's like themes as like, oh, I succeeded this check because I'm a little girl, you know, like that's just something you don't get to do in other games. You don't get to be like, I succeeded this check because, you know, my brain jumped to some really fucked up attacks for some reason because I was just trying to think of something weird. I succeeded this check because I'm OCD, you know.
Yeah. There are different. It's a cool thing to have the fun, unique ideas actually be fully validated. I think is a real strength of the game, and it's a fun thing. We'll proselytize it constantly for trying out Legend of the Mist because it's just there are games out there, if you really like a certain experience, can help you give it in a way that might. Is it going to be your new love, your new favorite thing in the world? Who knows? Probably not. Is it going to be something that you guys had fun and like gain an appreciation of the thing you enjoy, just a different field? I think that's a bigger strength. I think there's just a lot of power and like a lot of good positives in trying something different to give you an appreciation or slightly different context on something you like. That's why I say try other games than D&D 5e. Will you go back to a 5e campaign if you really love it? I imagine. But like, imagine how fun it'll be to just look at a game slightly differently and maybe even draw in some more concepts that you just never thought of without it.
Yeah. And, you know, it's at the end of the day, right? We don't need to yuck anyone's yum for the kinds of games they want to play. I thought for us being known for shitting on D&D repeatedly, I wanted to take a genuine seat and be like, okay, what does this actually provide? What does this system actually do that allows people to enjoy it? Because people, they do enjoy it. They do think that it is a genuinely fun experience, and there has to be something there, and I think it's very dishonest to ignore it. I think it's very dishonest to write it off, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to sit here and claim that I'm a tabletop enthusiast, right? I can't just be like, I'm a tabletop enthusiast, but I think D&D is a game that should never exist, or that it's just a bad game and that there's just many different versions out there. I've said before, Pathfinder is just better D&D, and I still believe that. But from the perspective of someone who wants to and like actually enjoys TTRPGs, right? Like not from a casual standpoint, but from a standpoint of people who actually want to play like tabletop games, who are there to play TTRPGs, right? Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, many of the strengths of D&D is ease of access, and you know, it's that cartoon fantasy appeal. It's that I get to role play as a character and all this kind of stuff. Mechanically, for all the things like all the stuff that these people like about the game, other than accessibility, can be done in Pathfinder. And Pathfinder really doesn't even offer that much resistance once you've played it like a few times. So
yeah,
you know, I still think Pathfinder is just better at D&D, but I completely understand why D&D exists. I think it should exist, and I think it has value, and it has value that people will find more preferable than Pathfinder, right? I don't think Pathfinder is like everyone should just play Pathfinder who likes D&D. No, I think D&D offers specific things for specific types of people. But if you're someone who likes TTRPGs, who likes the D&D fantasy, Pathfinder does a lot of it better because you don't have to worry about making bad builds. All the characters are good, and the game just plays very well, and it's super balanced, and it just creates a lot less struggle on both sides of the table. But, you know, that doesn't mean the vibes are going to match, and that's okay. You know, yeah. Vibes are vibes. But anyway, that's going to be it for us today on stream. Thank you all so much for watching. Alex, anything you want to leave us off with today before we head out?
Yeah, if you like lore videos, I got some shit in the work. I am making some content that should be coming out little bits in like the next couple days, then like a week. So go give it a watch if you want some good Mage the Ascension content in the very near future. Then later some stuff on Vampire. So yeah, go sub. My channel is Glue Boy.
Yep, and as for me, hopefully soon videos will be coming. Like I said, next week my mother will be moving back. We'll be moving into town, and while it's not going to be super consistent, I'm hoping to at least get like some videos out and work on some stuff. I'm going to be talking about Lancer. I'm going to be talking about, I want to finish up the Radiant Paths for the Cosmere RPG, especially because I do think I want to really cover Mistborn. Also soon, relatively soon here in August, the Impossible Magic book comes out for Pathfinder 2e. So that's another book, and I think the remastered Magus and Summoner are going to be there. Or Magus, I guess. I'm going to start saying, I like saying Magus, but Magus I'm going to start saying more because at least it's a little bit closer, even though it's still not technically accurate.
We literally we're so far in the opposite directions because I have a video coming out. I'll just spoil. It's on Old Clan Zamiski, and I get so many comments of how to pronounce it that I just double down harder into how I say it. I'm gonna always say Magus because it sounds better than Magus. Magus sounds like a wizard slur.
Kind of. I like Magus. I think it sounds good, but like I don't know. I'm also not trying to be like just overly set in my ways, not being too strict on a thing and being flexible enough to like change it. So
I've always been in the I unless you can't understand the word, pronunciation doesn't matter too much.
Yeah,
like camp. I mean, unless it's a person's name, that's where my line is.
Localization exists for a reason, right?
Exactly. That's the thing with Zamiski is like I'm pronouncing it the English American way, and I'm sorry I'm not pronouncing it in like old Latin, like
right,
dude, which is something someone's told me I should be doing. But like, you know, Magus sounds cooler and more regal.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe you're convincing me back. Maybe you're talking me off the edge here.
I am. Don't change. Don't change for these terrorists in your comment section. Don't listen to them. If someone really pushes at it, just blame me because I think that'd be really funny.
That would be funny. And then as well, I'm gonna be talking about Legend of this because legitimately, at least for me and what I want in tabletop, I can't imagine a better TTRPG. Like, from what I played recently and everything, the ability to feel like how I describe things, how I roleplay, to be creative, to always be thinking of like how to do interesting things in the scene. Like, no other TTRPG has made me feel this way, like plain and simple, because at the end of the day, some of them just kind of turn into a video game. You know, that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it's just like, you play Pathfinder, you want to do the accurate thing, or you want to, like, even if you're trying to just do what you think your character would do in the moment, right? The roleplay thing, right? It turns into, okay, I move here and do this. Do they save? Yes, no. Okay, I'm done with my turn. There's no way of describing it. There's no way of narratively setting it up in a way that's rewarding in these kind of games. And even in anime, you know, there's no way you can describe something better and make it work in anime. In fact, in anime, there's less to do because there's like less angles for mechanical like interference of like stats and certain things, you know. Like, there's no frightened condition in it. Well, there is a frightened condition in anime, but it's a lot harder to implement and use in a lot of situations. But like, Legend in the Mist, it's easy, it's baked in, it works super well. I've been playing so many genres, so many like settings that I really liked. I just don't feel like I could play in any other kind of game, and it's accessible. I want to play a certain game, you know, like if I wanted to play a JoJo TTRPG right now, Legend of the Mist would be the one, and I could do it right away, and I wouldn't need anything more. I wouldn't need to wait for a JoJo game to come out. I wouldn't even need to homebrew a lot of stuff to make it work. The system just works, and it can be as JoJo as I want based on the tags I put on the character. So
honestly, like, you'd adapt, and like, I gotta jump out of here, get ready for work, but honestly, what you need to do, I think you just need to do the same tag thing that you have for Beast Tamer. You would need stand user, and then it would be under it of like, you need a tag that says what your stand's range is. Are you a long range? Are you a short range? Short range, you're physical, that's your Star Platinums. Long range is where you're, you know, you have basically a gun, or your fucking Kakyoin. Or are you a long range automatic? Are you an autonomous stand? Are you like a fully sentient code, like independent stand? Like, you have to have a tag like that. Then you need like basically how does your stand manifest? Is an object like a guy, a little guy, a big guy? You need something like that. But you just need a category in the same way we have Beast Tamer. You would just need a tag for stand user, and then everything else can be. And then I think the mechanic for just having your creature, I think, would work really well for a stand. It's just like, if evolution is going to happen, like a stand evolution, it needs to be kind of difficult. Yeah. Because stand evolutions are normally like pretty crazy once they actually happen.
Yeah.
But stands are usually unchanging. So yeah.
That's gonna be it for us. I was gotta go, so I guess I'm gonna say goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.